Today's episode is titled, What is an Oscar Bait Film? This article has been written by Caroline Schneider. Every year there are many movies that release around the same time of year, close to awards season, all vying to get a coveted nomination. Some of these films are described as Oscar bait films, a term used to describe a few different kinds of films that all have one thing in common: the appeal to Oscar voters. These films fall under four categories: the historical drama, the musician biopic, the melodrama, and the quirky indie comedy. First Oscar bait category, the historical drama. One kind of film that is a surefire way to get an Oscar nomination is to make a historical drama.
The enemy tanks have stopped.
These films most commonly take place during World War II, the Victorian era, revolutions, or around the golden age of Hollywood. The genre is partially composed of fictional stories set in a certain time period and some based on real-life accounts. This genre does include some biopics, but ones primarily taking place before the 1950s. In previous years, this genre has been very successful in its Oscar bids.
Back then, there was nobody in this country who didn't know who Jimmy Hoffa was.
He got a gun! Get the gun out of his hand!
Just last year, Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, a movie tracking a man who worked for the mob during the 1950s, got 10 Oscar nominations, along with Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a film about the waning days of the golden age of Hollywood. In 2018's Oscar nominations, 5 of the 9 Best Picture nominees were historical dramas, with Dunkirk and Darkest Hour even being about the same event in history. The last time a historical drama won Best Picture was in 2014, when Steve McQueen's 12 Years a Slave took home the top prize. Second Oscar bait category, the musician biopic. Biopics are almost always a big Oscar draw, but ones about musicians tend to garner the most success during awards season. Since most of these films tend to focus on more modern artists, they don't quite fit in with the typical historical drama and follow their own formula for showing the life of a musician. The formula for most of these films is centering on one particular period in their life to create a framed story about the artist. These films don't always get nominations for Best Picture, but they do tend to get acting nominations for their stars. The past few years have given us a wealth of musician biopics. Rami Malek won Best Lead Actor at the Oscars for his portrayal of Freddie Mercury in the Queen biopic Bohemian Rhapsody.
This is a monumental moment. One, I'm so appreciative to all of you.
In 2019, the same year, Green Book took home Best Picture and Mahershala Ali won his second Best Supporting Actor Oscar for playing Dr. Don Shirley, a world-renowned pianist in that film.
Trying to capture Dr. Shirley's essence pushed me to my ends, which is a reflection of the person he was and the life that he lived.
Renee Zellweger won the Oscar for Best Lead Actress in 2020 for her role as Judy Garland in Judy, which focused on her final years doing stage concerts in Great Britain.
You won't forget me, will you? Promise you won't.
There are so many other films and performances that have had success from this that I could easily be here all day listing them off. Third Oscar bait category, the melodrama. The melodrama tends to be more of your family dramas, relationship stories, and films that deal with big themes such as grief, addiction, mental health, and other harrowing topics. These stories tend to sensationalize emotion while dealing with more personal, small-scale stories, which is what sets them apart from a drama. This genre is another one that tends to succeed most in the performer categories, since they tend to be more character-driven films centered around one or two people instead of ensemble pieces. Last year's Oscar race had one of the best examples of this kind of film in the form of Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story, a film exploring the relationship between a couple in the process of getting a divorce.
Charlie and I are getting a divorce, Mom. You can't be friends with him anymore.
G-Mom!
Charlie Bird!
Others from years further back include Casey Affleck's win for Best Lead Actor in 2017 for Kenneth Lonergan's Manchester by the Sea, which got a total of 6 Oscar nominations, including Affleck's win.
I'm really proud to be a part of this community in general. I look out at all of you and I'm just dumbfounded that I'm included.
The melodrama, along with historical dramas, is probably one of the most successful genres among Oscar voters. Fourth Oscar bait category, the quirky indie comedy. A lot of Oscar-nominated films tend to be more mainstream, blockbuster-style films, but there's usually at least one small independent film that finds its way into the Oscars, and it tends to be a comedy. These films are very similar to melodrama in the sense that they are lower-budget films, primarily character-driven, and deal with similar themes but tonally are different, since they take those elements and frame them with humor.
Not tired.
You were dragging your feet.
You are so infuriating.
Please stop yelling.
I'm not yelling. Oh, it's perfect.
Do you love it?
This is another genre that primarily gets recognized in the acting categories, specifically in lead actor and actress and in the screenplay categories. The most recent indie comedy to garner major success at the Oscars was Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird, a coming-of-age film about a graduating high school senior in 2002 Sacramento, which got 5 nominations, including Best Picture. That same year saw Margot Robbie's acclaimed performance as disgraced figure skater Tonya Harding in I, Tonya, which, despite its subject matter, was most definitely a comedy.
I mean, come on! What kind of friggin' person bashes in their friend's knee? Who would do that to a friend?
And the great Allison Janney's Oscar win in the Best Supporting Actress for her portrayal of Harding's mother in the film. The Big Sick, about the early months of the relationship between real-life couple Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon while she's in a medically induced coma, is the most recent indie comedy to appear at the Oscars with a lone nomination for Best Original Screenplay. What are the 2021 Oscar bait films? With this awards season now in full swing after the Golden Globe, SAG-AFTRA, and Critics' Choice nominations have all been released, there is now a more clear idea as to what films are going to find their way into the Oscar voters' screens within the next month and a half. This year's race is filled with historical dramas, with the current frontrunner for Best Picture being Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of the Chicago 7, and joined by Shaka King's Judas and the Black Messiah, Regina King's One Night in Miami, and David Fincher's Mank. There are also 2 musician biopics factoring into the competition, with George C. Wolfe's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which also features the final performance of the late Chadwick Boseman, and Andra Day's turn as legendary jazz singer Billie Holiday in the United States versus Billie Holiday.
NAACP says Billie Holiday is the voice of our people.
When it comes to melodrama, there are a couple of films that could be players in the Best Picture race, and some that could be in the acting categories. Lee Isaac Chung's Minari, a film about a Korean-American family trying to achieve the American dream, is a possibility in most of the big categories, as is Chloe Zhao's Nomadland. Vanessa Kirby is likely to get a lead actress nomination for her heartbreaking performance in Pieces of a Woman, and Glenn Close will probably find herself in Best Supporting Actress for Hillbilly Elegy. There are a couple of indie comedies that could get some attention from the Oscars this year, but their chances are not as strong as some of the other films out this year. One that is likely to get nominated for several Oscars is Emerald Fennell's Promising Young Woman, which is considered a black comedy, having taken the critic circles by storm and is getting more and more buzz as word of mouth recommendations spread for it.
What are you gonna do?
I don't know.
Max Barbakow's Palm Springs, a new take on the time loop film, could find its way onto Best Original Screenplay, but it's got quite the uphill battle to get there. The nomination process for the Oscars doesn't officially begin until March 3rd, so there's still time before we know what films the Academy will be taken with this year, but based on its history, it's fun to speculate what might be included in the 10 nominees for Best Picture. Knowing the kinds of films that are usually Oscar bait helps with that, but we won't know for sure until March 15 if that format holds up. Thank you.